which US Space Force just did something unbelievable to Iran. As we all know, this there's been a long time this all is going on. US versus Iran, and what not casualties we have seen. Now this is something like new. Like, what did US Space Force just did? Because we know how ruckus and how brutal they have been through all out the time, and how Iran is facing everything. And we know about the power of US Army. It's literally crazy how they are fought, and literally I'm very fond of those jets and all those things, about how the fight is going on and about how the war is going on. Still, now this will be like very exciting to see like what new is upcoming. It will be very exciting to watch this video. So let's just watch this. Let's go.
Iran thought it had everything figured out.
Okay.
Missiles and drones, use them both, and you can hold off the US by causing enough damage to bring
Actually,
an end
it's
to
a
big
big
Operation
question. It's a
Iran was
big
wrong.
question that
The US
why
isn't conventional.
Space Force
The US
involved
has
in
just started a
this.
space war. Technology so futuristic that it shouldn't even exist is obliterating some of Iran's most important
Oh,
weapons, and there's nothing the
Yes.
crumbling Tehran regime can do about it. The US is using satellites to take out Iran's missile launch sites. As much as we'd love to tell you that the US has an impossible space laser that fires on those
Space
sites
laser.
as soon as they're discovered, that isn't the case, at least not yet. But what the US is doing is just as ingenious, and it allows for Iran's launch sites to be detected as soon as they're used and then destroyed within a matter of minutes. Let's set the scene. With so much of its military infrastructure in tatters already, Iran has been reduced to launching
oh,
missiles from
at the
isolated
single
sites.
night.
Iran has to
Iran.
be careful. It knows that US fighter jets and bombers are patrolling the skies, so any missile launch has to be conducted from a safe location.
And it
And
has
it has
to be fast.
enough to allow Iran to fire, then get its launchers back into cover before a response comes. That should be fine for Iran, as long as its air defense radars give the all clear. It has plenty of time to launch before a US fighter jet comes calling. That's what Iran thinks. But as the launcher is rolled out and the missile is fired, something is happening in the deep depths of space that Iran doesn't realize. In orbit around the Earth are satellites operated by the US Space Force, which was established in 2019 during
During
US President Donald
first
Trump's
term.
first term in office.
Yeah.
Those satellites are
Oh,
packed with infrared sensors and they're
at
constantly watching.
Hormuz.
As soon as one of Iran's missiles blasts off,
Just for
the satellites
children.
detect the heat
This
signatures
is
of those
a
missiles.
huge like
In an
change in
instant,
the
the location of
technology,
the
and
launch and in
it's
turn the
amazing to
launcher
watch.
is
Three
pinpointed.
world-class American
Air
destroyers
defenses on the
just
ground are
transisted very
activated so
out of the
quickly
strait.
that Iran's missile is destroyed before it has the chance to reach its target. That's bad enough for Iran. Another failed launch isn't what Iran needs now that the US and Israel have shut down the saturation strategy it intended to use. We'll get into in a few moments. But what Iran never accounted for is that heat signatures detected in space can lead to missile launches being destroyed on the
Laser,
ground.
bing, bing,
As soon as
oh
the
my
US satellite picks up
god.
on the
They
launcher's
have
location,
totally
the data
destroyed
is sent to a
the
fighter jet
jet.
pilot.
Is this a
That pilot
jet or
arrives at the launch
what?
site within minutes. A
Wha-
standoff missile is fired. The
Oh,
Iranian
it was a
soldiers who
drone.
launched the
It's a jet.
missile barely even register that the response is coming
Laser
before the
bing
missile
bing
hits.
zone.
The launcher explodes, and one more piece of Iran's missile infrastructure is taken out of the war. This is a type of war that Iran never thought it would have to fight. A technological battle against the United States that has far more tricks up its sleeve than anybody could have expected. And while there are more ways that the US is using space to shatter Iran, which we'll cover soon, the existence of its heat-detecting satellites is perhaps the biggest threat the US poses to Iran's missile-based strategy.
Whoa.
The New York Post reports that the process of tracking one of Iran's launches involves both the satellites and special nodes on the ground. As soon as a missile is launched, infrared beams are fired from America's
Oh,
satellites as they
America's
automatically track the heat
satellites.
being
Now I
yes,
know why these were
on the ground,
involved.
and remarkably enough, almost entirely in the US itself rather than its Middle Eastern
same.
bases, crews are working non-stop inside radomes. These special radar domes, which look like giant golf balls buried in the
Oh,
ground, receive the
they
information that the
launched a
Space
layered
Force satellites
attack.
capture, and they use it to calculate
Yeah.
both the trajectories of the fired missiles and the locations from which they are fired. It's an extremely effective
Okay.
combination of technology, and
Wow.
it has resulted in hundreds of Iran's missiles being destroyed before they ever come
Wow,
close to
crazy
striking their
man.
targets. And what the US has here is a three-layered space-focused
America
air
is
defense
so
that is unlike
powerful
anything that the world
actually.
has seen before. Satellites,
It's
radars, and
hard
radomes
to beat
combine to create
America.
an early warning system that is so advanced.
Yeah.
The US is the first to know about any of Iran's missile launches, and it learns about them practically as soon as Iran decides to fire. And what this also means for the US is that it can avoid putting boots on the ground in Iran until it is absolutely
Absolutely
ready,
ready, like
as explained by
from
former
the space,
Space Force member
direct.
Bree Fran. The fact that this isn't a mass formation of troops with rifles on the ground speaks to the fact that this force is built with
Oh,
extreme technology and the brain power to operate it. Fran tells the New York Post, adding, Those
Okay,
combine to make us
F-35
the
was
most capable force on Earth
there.
and keep Americans safe from harm as they do the most difficult, inherently risky things that
Oh,
we ask them to do. What the US has orbiting the Earth right now is the ultimate high ground.
it's a
Having the
whole
high ground has
show,
always been
man.
an advantage in conventional warfare. It provides visibility across large swathes of the battlefield, as well as a defensible
Hmm.
position that forces an enemy to
Oh,
work even harder to
Oh,
take territory. But this new form of high ground changes the game. The US doesn't
helmet
just have
mounting.
visibility on the territory that surrounds a large hill, it can see all of Iran at all times, thanks to its satellites. And as for Iran having to work harder to take the high ground, that just isn't even an option for Tehran's crumbling regime. It's brought drones and missiles to a space war,
OMG.
and it can't do a thing about the satellites that the US is using to shatter its entire strategy. The
oh,
impact on Iran tells you all you need to know about the effectiveness of the US space
Oh,
technology. Iran fired more than 500 ballistic
500.
missiles at targets throughout the Middle East, including military installations and civilian sites by March 4th, according to the Long War Journal. It would be inaccurate to claim that none of Iran's missiles have hit their marks, but by March 2nd, only 6 US service members have been killed in Iran's attacks, along with 18 being wounded. That low casualty rate tells us the vast
okay.
majority of Iran's missiles aren't making it through to their targets, and heat-seeking
Heat-seeking
satellites so far up in the
satellites.
sky that they can't be seen are one of the biggest reasons why. On the missile launch front, the BBC reports that the Israel Defense Forces claim that 70% of Iran's ballistic missile launches have been destroyed
Hmm.
since the beginning of Operation Epic Fury and Operation
Operation
Roaring Lion.
Epic
Iran.
Fury and
Many
Roaring
of these
Land. I
sites would have been
remember.
I
known about and
don't understand
targeted at the
why
beginning of
Iran
the
is not
operations.
stopping.
But now, as Iran has moved to a strategy of launching small numbers of
Neither
missiles from
Iran, neither
isolated
US.
sites,
Nobody's
the
gonna
launches
stop.
that are being
Yeah.
taken out are
And
often
the war
detected by
is
America's
becoming
space
worse and
assets.
worse only.
Every launch that Iran attempts
Yeah,
presents a
and we are
massive
facing
risk.
crisis.
Iran sends a massive
Yes.
beacon into the sky with every missile that it fires. We mentioned that Iran has now been restricted to isolated missile launches a moment ago. That's another major problem for Iran's regime. That regime has been preparing for war, most likely with Israel, but perhaps also with the US, for years. Part of that preparation involved the amassing of a ballistic missile stockpile believed to exceed
Stockpile.
2,000, per the BBC. Iran's strategy in a war was to saturate the skies of its enemies with ballistic missiles and drones, essentially overwhelming air defenses so that missiles and drones could touch down, cause damage, and basically dissuade an enemy from launching further attacks. The cost of war against Iran was key to the country's military doctrine,
Military
and
doctrine.
missiles were the linchpin of the entire thing. Iran still has massive missile stockpiles, but as satellites help the US pick off what Iran fires and to destroy the launches being used, the saturation strategy has all but disappeared. Iran is still
Oh,
Yeah,
attempting to make
cost, I guess
Operation
it
Epic
was
Fury
very
appear
much.
to cost more than it's
yes.
worth. The smaller strikes against US bases in other Gulf nations are in service of Iran's attempting to raise the economic and political costs of the war by dragging those nations kicking and screaming into a fight in which they want no part. But the strategy would also be much stronger for Iran if it were able to unleash its missiles in the volume that it intended before the US brought its satellites into play. Iran now has to stagger launches rather than saturate. We see that in the numbers coming out of the United Arab Emirates, per Al Jazeera. During the first 24 hours of Operation Epic Fury, Iran unleashed 167 cruise and ballistic missiles.
Whoa.
Oh my god, that's a
141
huge
drones
number.
attached. By day 15 of the conflict, the numbers were down to 4
106.
missiles and 6 drones. We see something similar in Israel, where the 100 or so projectiles Iran
100
launched
or
during the
so.
first couple of days of the war have dropped into single digits. Again, Space Force assets aren't the only reason why this happened, but the heat-seeking satellites have played a huge role, forcing Iran to get more strategic with missile strikes that it knows have a high probability of not working because they can be detected at the moment of launch. Technology then has been the killer of Iran's desired approach to war, but it goes much deeper than satellites that can detect missile launches. AI and cyber
AI and cyber
tactics have
tactics. I
combined
think
to
they're a
degrade
great
Iran's
help
entire
to
approach.
people right now.
But before we dig deeper into how, this is a quick reminder that you are watching The Military Show. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the perfect time to hit that button. Ahead of the initial hellstorm of missiles and bombs that the US and Israel unleashed on Iran on February 28, a combination of cyber and space activities have been used to degrade Iran's supporting infrastructure.
Supporting infrastructure.
Command and
Okay.
control networks, radars, sensors, and communication systems were all targeted by these non-kinetic efforts, which were made to make it extremely difficult for Iran's regime to coordinate its
Wow.
response to what was happening. All of its leaders were being turned to dust. General
Turned
Dan
to
Kane,
dust.
who is the chairman
That's a
of the
big
Joint Chiefs
statement.
of Staff, explained how when he said, "The first movers were US Cybercom and US Spacecom, layering non-kinetic effects,
Cybercom and US
disrupting and
Spacecom.
degrading and blinding Iran's ability to see, communicate, and respond. From space, the US ripped out Iran's eyes, which only made the military infrastructure that Operation Epic Fury and Operation Roaring Lion have targeted all the more vulnerable. This was the US throwing sand into Iran's eyes before delivering haymaker
OMG.
after haymaker to its jaw. Brent David Ziarnik, who is a retired US Air Force officer and former professor in the US Space Force program at Johns Hopkins University, explains more, telling the New York Post, Space Force figures out where the radar is, then work with Cyber Command to jam it. Cyber Command will try to make Iran's radar not work. It will involve infiltrating the system and shutting it down or taking it over.
This is so technical. It's very difficult for us to
So Iran
understand
doesn't
even.
just have to worry about the US unleashing its fighter jets as soon as a missile launch site is discovered by Space Force. The radars and computers used to guide the missiles that Iran launches are also being targeted.
Oh my god, the
That's bad
computers
enough
are
from the perspective of
using.
ballistic missile launches. But it becomes an even more serious problem for Iran
B-2
when you
stealth
remember that its air
bombers.
defense systems fire missiles too. An air defense system that can't see is a system that can't stop a US fighter jet or bomber from swooping in and destroying whatever is next on its massive list of targets. This combination of space and cyber warfare is likely the reason why the US and Israel had successfully struck 15,000 targets by March 13th, as claimed by US Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. Around 80% of Iran's defense network has been taken offline, most of it during the first 24 hours of the conflict, and it's now
My
clear that
god,
not all of those
80%
defenses
of
were
the
destroyed.
network of
Space
Iran
Force
has been
detected
taken.
radars. American and Israeli
Why,
cyber forces
Iran?
shut those
Why?
radars down,
Just
crippling Iran's air
surrender.
defenses in the process. This was the silent sabotage that
My
laid the
God.
foundation for all of the success that the
We
US has
all know that
experienced
Iran
during the operation.
is in
And it was
loss
sabotage
actually.
conducted not by infiltrators on the ground, but by satellites in
It's
orbit.
almost done.
Communications
Iran
were
Yeah.
disrupted and
gone.
GPS signals were jammed,
Yes.
which has also played a part in Iran's missile-based strategy, failing to achieve the results that the regime thought it would. Oh, and what there was of Iran's own space command has also gone the way of the dodo. We'll come back to that toward the end of the video, so stick with us till then. Before that, let's throw some artificial intelligence into the mix. As if
Artificial
satellites
intelligence.
detect
Yeah.
missile launches and
Artificial
radars weren't
intelligence
enough,
are also involved
Iran also
here.
had to deal with the US using AI as it unleashed a technological tidal wave on Tehran. On March 11th, NBC News reported that unnamed sources had told it
US
that the US
military is
military had been
using
using
it.
AI systems provided by
My
Palantir to help it identify
god.
potential targets as it continues to launch
That's so
strikes on Iran.
dark actually.
It's likely that the US has been leveraging the Maven intelligence analysis program, which Palantir built based on Anthropic's Claude AI technology.
Claude.
This is the same system that the US used in its operation to capture former Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. And it
Oh,
allows military personnel to sift through massive amounts of intelligence quickly. Specific targeting advice isn't provided by this system. Instead, it seems to act more like a filter that gets rid of the noise to ensure that the US military is only working with usable intelligence that helps it to pick and choose its targets. CBS News says that the Pentagon is keeping quiet about exactly how it's using AI in Iran, despite
How?
Hegseth claiming that he wants to make AI usage central to how the US military operates.
And from this video,
However,
we can
retired US
also
Navy Admiral and now
imagine
senior
how
director of the
advanced
Center on
America
Cyber
is,
Technology
and we have to
Innovation
say
at the
that it
Foundation
is
for
not.
Defense
It is.
Democracies, Mark
We are not
Montgomery,
living in
reveals how powerful this
2020,
technology is.
2026.
The
Yeah,
military is now
America is
processing
living
roughly
in
1,000
2050
potential targets a
only.
day and striking the majority of them,
Definitely.
with
They are
turnaround time for the next
using
strike potentially under
AI
4 hours.
for the tax and
Montgomery
all.
tells CBS, adding,
Crazy.
a human is still in the
Literally, they
loop,
caught
but AI is doing
people
the
with
work that
AI.
used
They
to
are
take days of
using
analysis
attacks for
and doing
AI.
it at a
man.
scale
Oh
no
my
previous campaign has
god,
matched.
used to take days of
Seriously.
analysis and doing it on
Starting a
that
space
scale.
war isn't enough. You now have to throw AI capabilities that Iran could only dream of having into Operation Epic Fury 2. What we see here is that the US has found a way to identify targets at such high speeds that it can actually match the force that it has brought to the Persian Gulf. Dozens of fighter jets flying from aircraft carriers can now launch sorties around the clock because they have a constant flow of targets coming in due to the US's use of AI. As for Iran, it can't even hope to compete with the US in the space war. Not that it could anyway, but earlier we touched on how the US has destroyed whatever space-related assets that Iran had a long time ago. By March 5th, Iran's Space Command was gone, Defense One reports.
Oh,
While not the most important strike that the US has carried out in Iran, it does mean that Iran can't use the 13 operational satellites, 3 of which were registered to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps that it has launched into space.
why? But
Iran
why?
also appears to have no
No
real
anti-satellite.
anti-satellite
Iran has
capabilities,
no
as they now
anti-satellites.
reports.
Oh,
It has used electronic warfare to jam commercial satellite signals in the past, but how that has translated into jamming military GPS signals isn't clear. Iran likely can't do much. The US and Israel wouldn't have hit 15,000 targets and counting if it could. The fact that Iran has no global navigation satellite system of its own also leaves it reliant on the systems developed by others. The Daily Sabah points out that only the US, the European Union, China, and Russia have these kinds of systems. And of those 4, 2 are almost certain not to provide Iran with any help. China might, though it risks the wrath of the US if it does. That leaves Russia, which seems the most likely candidate for providing
leaves
Iran with the
Russia,
satellite
Yeah.
navigation tech that it needs for its missile and drone launches.
Sharing satellite
Russia has also
imagery
been
and
providing
drone
satellite
technology.
imagery to Iran, the Wall Street Journal reports. However, this is all fairly basic stuff, at least when it comes to the space war that the
The
US has
space
unleashed.
war US
Plus, if Putin
unleashed.
decides that he wants a little more leverage in his dealings with the US, he could always sell Iran down the river by pulling access, which would leave Iran with practically nothing in space that it can use to harm the
Nothing.
US. So where does all of this leave Iran? All its regime can really do now is look to the skies that it no longer controls, and then look further into space, where the US has won the satellite war before it really started. Iran's satellites are functionally useless now that its version of Space Command is gone.
They said
American
that Iran's
satellites
satellites are
missiles it's
useless.
Great.
and Iran is paying the price.
Yeah.
But
My
Iran can't keep its
God.
head in the clouds. On the ground, the US is hitting it just as hard as it ever has, and it's snatched away the last thing that was keeping Iran alive.
Seriously, this video was so shocking, and literally I'm feeling sad for Iran so much that literally Iran is losing day by day. He doesn't have any satellites, and if it had satellites, so basically, so this, and it is not surrendering. So this is so shocking for me. And we also got to know that how powerful America is. Basically, America is using AI. We got to know from this video, and America is also using computer to give, to control basically jets and all. So that was also so shocking for me. And from this video we got to know that America is not living in 2026. It seems that America is in 2050. And from this video we also got to know that how advanced America is, and it is so powerful. And they are using F-35 for it, they are using space forces for it. So yeah, definitely I'm stunned after watching this video.
Actually, like using space forces for this thing, it was absolutely not on the list, because like I have seen about the war, it was all between the jets and on the land, on the waters, but I was not imagining definitely it on the in the like space, where they are directly using satellites to catch the heat about where are the collisions taking place, where are these taking place. And there are a different war which is going on in the space with Iran, and here that they have said it, that we have already defeated Iran in the satellite war and it is useless. And these are some like bold statements they made, and definitely from these statements we can accumulate that US is like on the top, the greatest of all time, and nobody can match the power of US. So let me know, what do you guys think about this video in our comment section below. So do like, share and subscribe.
Subscribe. Bye.